Rise up!
This is the Rise Up See Red podcast, all about the Arizona Cardinals and the NFL, featuring insider and outsider perspectives. Enjoy the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Now here are your hosts, Jess Root and Seth Cox.
Hello, Arizona Cardinals fans, and welcome to the latest edition of the Rise Up See Red podcast, the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. I'm your host, Jess Root, from CardsWire.com, USA Today's NFL Wire site that covers Arizona Cardinals. In episode 775, it is another draft show as we are recording 1 week away from the the 2026 NFL Draft. Joining me is my co-host Seth Cox from RevengeOfTheBirds.com, SB Nation's Arizona Cardinals site. And Seth, basically this is a show where we're just going to kind of complain and think about, we're going to talk about some of the big mock drafts that come out, the chatter about Ty Simpson, and if we had to pick, what are the ideal position combinations or player combinations that the Cardinals could get in the draft? And I guess we have to start with the three mock drafts that came out in the last couple of days. And we had Mel Kiper, we had Todd McShay, who's now with the Ringer, and we had Dane Brugler, his 7-round mock draft for The Athletic. And I want to talk about the Brugler draft because as I sent to you guys in the group text last night on Wednesday, that mock draft just pissed me off because it was like, I get why they make why he made those projections, but if the Cardinals had that draft next week, I could not think of a worse. I don't think I could come up with a worse sort of outcome than what it is. And if you haven't seen the Brugler mock draft, and there were no trades, but with the number 3 pick, they go the tackle Francis Mauigoa, and in round 2 they go Alabama quarterback Ty Simpson. They do not address the edge until day 3. And they get, so round 3 is Georgia wide receiver Zachariah Branch. Round 4 is Alabama edge LT Overton, cornerback Latrell McCutcheon that Seth talked about in the cornerback show in round 5. Alabama center Parker Brailsford, center, and then another edge, round 7, Boston College edge Quintavious Hutchins. I hated it. Everything about it. There was only one pick. There was only one pick that made sense to me, and that was McCutcheon, because day 3, long, athletic cornerback. Everything else about that draft didn't make sense to me. Taking the tackle at pick number 3 when David Bailey was on the board, criminal. Then doubling down, and then they get Simpson in round 2, only to see Max Ihenachor from out of Arizona State go the pick after that. The Titans got the perfect Cardinals draft. They got David Bailey and Max, the tackle out of Arizona State, in rounds 1 and 2 because the Cardinals passed on David Bailey. Of course, if they took David Bailey, like if they took Francis Mauigoa, they're not going to take Max in round 2. But I was flabbergasted at that mock draft because it didn't make sense. Like, why would you take the tackle over David Bailey? And as a result, you take the quarterback in round 2. Zachariah Branch does not make any sense for the Cardinals in terms of Monty Ossenfort because he's a faster Greg Dortch, and Dortch was already here. But the Cardinals have only brought in tall receivers, 6 foot and up. They've only brought in tall receivers since Monty Ossenfort came. Then their pass rusher, their edge guy Overton, is not a good pass rusher. He's a strong edge setter but with very limited pass rushing upside. McCutcheon makes sense. I don't know much about Brailsford, but a round seven pick on an edge seems like just a throwaway. Am I off base for being this irrationally upset if this is how things turn out on draft night that next weekend?
No, I mean it's a tough one to swallow, man. It's not fun. And the Malagoa pick's fine in the sense that it, addresses a need. The interesting part about all of it, Jess, and something that you've kind of hit on, is that you've got a team that has obvious needs at premier positions in this draft, and instead of addressing them, you swing for the fences of like, hey, let's fix the offense in one offseason. And you ignore that this was literally one of the worst defenses, if not the worst defense in the NFL last year. We talked about it. This draft would literally just be saying to everybody, well, we're really hopeful that Walter Nolan stays healthy. We're really hopeful that, BJ Ojulari and Baron Browning and
Jordan Burch
can produce. And you look at, like, you add nothing of substance, like you said, in the first 3 rounds of the draft.
I mean, yes, they get a tackle. Yes, they get a tackle.
Sorry, I meant on the defensive side of the ball. Sorry.
Yes.
On the defensive side of the ball, right? You add nothing of substance to a defense that you're literally saying, man, I really hope Walter Nolan, Will Johnson, and Garrett Williams are healthy the whole season. That's the plan, Jess, with that draft. And the craziest part is it could happen. Like, the idea of taking Ty Simpson over Max Ahinacor is not far-fetched, because you have a short-sighted GM and an owner that just doesn't understand how to win. And so his thought process is, we got to address the quarterback position immediately. Like, we got to fix quarterback. That's what we have to do. And so instead of fixing other positions, right? Like, instead of saying like, hey, we could get a pass rusher that helps. We can get a right tackle of the present and the future, have bookends, have, the Josh Sweat running mate and the guy that takes over for Josh Sweat. And we're better on both lines. We're not a better team overall. We're better on both lines, though. And therefore, we're going to be more competitive. We're going to play closer games more consistently. With the idea of Francis Mauigoa and Ty Simpson, you're saying, okay, well, we're going to set this up so that Jacoby Brissett and or Gardner Minshew have success. And then we're going to hold Ty Simpson back, knowing that unless it is just a 0-17, 1-16 complete disaster show, we know that we're going to get another year now because we got Ty Simpson. We picked, and that to me is the wrong way.
It's a desperate job. It's a job protection pick.
Yeah. Instead of
saying, hey, we want to win.
Right. And it's like, hey, we want, and then you go, and one of our buddies actually said it makes sense, because then next year you just take Dylan Stewart with the first overall pick, because you're gonna be so bad, and it sucks, right? Like, that's a terrible way to look at things, but it's true, right? Like, if you go the Brugler mock, you're basically saying like, hey, we're gonna take Dylan Stewart first overall next year. So it is what it is. Because we can't unless it's so bad that they fire Monty and maybe even LaFleur, but I would guess it would just be Monty. You're gonna take, Dylan Stewart or the edge out of South Carolina, or Colin Simmons, the edge out of Texas, right? Like that's the first pick in the draft. And so the idea that happens is just so frustrating, because you're basically punting another season. Like, hey, it's no big deal. We'll just, next year it'll work out. And it's like, no, like, I get it. Like, you want to answer the quarterback question, and you want to do it sooner than later. And I get that. But the reality is you're so far away. You're so, like, people can go, I've seen the post. It's like, and I know this isn't the mock, but like, I've seen the post, man, that are like, oh my gosh, can you imagine if they went Jeremiah Love in round 1 and Ty Simpson in a trade up in round 2? And I'm like, does anybody watch football? Like what games are you winning when you do that? You improve nothing on the defense. You don't get better. Like, you just, and by the way, if you listen to our running back show, I absolutely love Jeremiah Love. Love him. Think he's going to be.
You're going to set him up to have an Ashton Genty type rookie season, which was disappointing.
Well, and you're setting yourself up to be the Las Vegas Raiders next year. You didn't improve your offensive line. You didn't improve your defense at all. You added a running back that's going to be your running back 2, maybe 3, and you added your quarterback 3. Like, I get it. You're looking towards the future, but you should improve as well. And instead you got somehow worse. And so, that's the interesting part to that, idea. So you got the Brugler mock, right? Doesn't make any sense.
The Mel Kiper one is a reasonable one. It's a boring one. They get Arvell Reese, and they stay in pick. David Bailey goes 2nd overall, and so the Cardinals go with the pass rusher Arvell Reese, and then, but he has them trading up into round 1 to get Ty Simpson. Now, I will say this. Now, while we both, as you said a few shows ago, ardently against giving up assets to move up to get a quarterback. That said, okay, this one isn't terrible, because they trade back into round 1. They move from 34 to 30, and so they move up from the 2nd round into round 1, and it only costs them spots in round 3. So they move down 29 spots. They go from 65 to 94. And so they didn't lose any picks. And so that's not bad. But the way we see it is that now they address the pass rush critical. And they did, if they believe that Ty Simpson's the guy, they got Ty Simpson. Now, do they still have a glaring need at tackle? Yes, but as we've detailed in previous shows, the Cardinals do have options at right tackle. It's not they're not none. You're not going to be excited about any of the options. Elijah Wilkinson doesn't do anything for anyone, but Josh Fryer, that is, might develop into something. He could be something. You've got Christian Jones still. From a couple of years ago, people liked that pick, and they signed Ole Udo, and so they've got literally 4 different options for right tackle already. None of them which are inspiring, but if you significantly improve the pass rush, which should improve your defense, and you secure a quarterback, okay. I like that a little bit more, but it feels like that the Ty Simpson train, it was a few weeks ago that there was a there was a big Ty Simpson train go to the Cardinals going on. Then it died down, but now we're having it again. People are feeding that train. I wouldn't hate this happening, except for the fact that, neither you nor I are sold on Ty Simpson as a franchise quarterback. And that's the main thing. And if you're going to trade up for a guy that we don't think is going to be a franchise quarterback, that is a waste. Reese at the top of the draft, fantastic. And hopefully he pans out because he's got the talent. And so many people are convinced he's going to be an all-pro player. And
it is really interesting to see that there's a lot of pushback against the guy that's widely considered to be the best non-quarterback in the draft.
Yeah, and I think it's just the shock here. It's trauma from quote unquote tweener picks. I don't treat it the same. And so while I would prefer David Bailey, I still think if David Bailey is the pick at number 2, that if you can't trade back to get a tackle, Reese is the guy. And I think I'd rather take Reese and hit a tackle at the top of round 2 than any other scenario. Bailey, Hiniakor, perfect. Reese, Max, also pretty dang good. But yeah, so we have one mock draft, the Dane Brugler mock draft. Both of those hitting the Ty Simpson train. I will say this: the Todd McShay mock draft. He showed some consistency because he was the one on his podcast that said that the Cardinals want to draft it. There is a desire for them they want to go tackle in round 1, but they don't believe that number 3 is worth the pick. So they want to trade back and get a tackle. And so he has the Cardinals moving back in consistent with what he has heard. And so they move back from 3 to 8. The Saints move up for Arbel Reese. They move back to number 8. They pick up the number 42 pick, so they pick up a second-round pick. And they pick up a 2027 second-round pick. And then they get Spencer Fanu. Now, Seth isn't but there was an article about like potential all-pros. There was, I can't remember who it was that wrote it, but put Fano in the same category as Reese, as a guy that believes that will be great.
My thing with Fanu is not necessarily that I don't think he'll be good. I can't see him being the pick because of the arm length. Like,
yeah.
That's my biggest thing.
You don't think Monty would take him?
That's it. Like he's a guy that's an outlier, and it's just so hard to see Monty doing something like that when he's never done it. Now, it doesn't mean it won't happen. Like, that's my big thing. It doesn't mean it won't happen. It's just not something that we've seen before. And so if it does happen, it'll be just a new kind of data point. But also, let's be honest, if that happens, the McShay mock, depending on how round 2 goes, could kind of be the end of Monty at that point too. So
I mean, I was not in love with any of them. The McShay one, here's the thing with the McShay one is that I liked is that his matched what he was hearing.
Yeah, but it's also, I mean, I think we both agree. We like that. We like that move back. We like the addition of the second round pick. That second round pick that's a nice one. Like then
you got 30, then you've got 34 and 42. So you guys, they could go a lot of different directions. Now,
let me ask you this, and again, this is tough, But looking at how it goes, in the McShay mock, Mendoza, Bailey, Reese, Jeremiah Love, Francis Magoa, Sonny Styles, Carnell Tate. Who is the pick at 8? That's the problem. I feel like in that scenario, the only answers to me are Fano and Bain, and they're both such outliers in the box check marks that just feels like it won't happen.
Yeah.
And wouldn't that kind of be the worst case scenario too? Like if they ended up moving down to 8 and then they ended up having to go with like somebody that wouldn't fit into that mold, because I genuinely don't know who would be then. I mean, the best player is Caleb Downs.
Yeah.
But
so now would because Caden Proctor goes 12th to the Browns. Would they? And Proctor's one of the guys. So of the top linemen that we know, the Cardinals have met with Mauigoa and Caden Proctor for top 30. We have if they met with Fanu or Caleb Lomu or Monroe Freeling, we haven't heard about it. But they did meet with Proctor and they did meet with Mauigoa. What if? Would it be terrible to, rather than Fanu, to go with the Alabama kid at number 8?
It's just, again, he's the 350 kid, right? And it's just that makes it tough. But like he's at least his 350 is well put together, right? He's not a sloppy kid. And we've seen the Goonies, right? Like Ty Simpson talked about it on his Gruden spot, that that trick play they called the Goonies for Caden Proctor. And so he is an athlete, and he is a special, unique athlete. I think you're moving a kid from the left to right side doesn't mean anything that it won't work, but again, it could be interesting. But
then of course in the McShay draft, the Cardinals, it was across the board. Everyone's pushing Ty Simpson.
Which means it's either going to happen or they've set up a great smoke screen to draft somebody else. I don't know.
Yes. Who knows? And with that, let's talk about Ty Simpson coming next on the Res of Seaward podcast. Best Star Cardinals talk to them. Let's talk about the Ty Simpson train. What do we like? What do we not like about it? That's coming up next on Res of Sea Red. We're back on the Rise of Seer podcast, Best of Cardinals talk on the web. Oh my gosh, the Ty Simpson chatter. It hit all the mock drafts. Jeremy Fowler. So after the report came out that Ty Simpson had his top 30 visit with the Cardinals on the last day that draft prospects could do that, Jeremy Fowler, reposted and added this tidbit. He said, in NFL circles, that Ty Simpson to the Cardinals is the most believed thing. Like basically, it feels like that Ty Simpson to the Cardinals is in an inevitability, which is interesting to say the least for a guy like, I can't remember who it was who said if he gets drafted by the Cardinals or the Rams, then he's going to be a decade-long starter. So here's the thing. In league circles, Simpson has been linked to Arizona more than any other team. That is interesting. And the idea that he's just going to be a decades-long starter, you have to look about this. The Cardinals hadn't, when was the last time the Cardinals had a decade-long starter?
Yeah, I know. And that's the thing is it's
Lomax.
Yeah, it's an interesting concept and idea, and we'll see what happens. I've said my piece on Ty. There's a ton of question marks. I don't know. When you look at it, 15 starts. We've talked about that, right? We talked about the size. It's a legitimate concern. from a player standpoint, player profile standpoint, and how he plays the game. He's a smaller quarterback at 6'1", 211 pounds, and we know he's going to play much lighter than that because they all do, right? Good athlete, not great athlete. He's an older prospect because he, sat. He waited till his turn, and those are legitimate questions that have to be asked. When you're talking about a guy that you're turning the keys of the franchise over to. The first one being this is a guy that had to sit for 3 years before it was his turn. Sat behind Jalen Milroe and Bryce Young in 2022, sat behind Milroe in 2023, sat behind Milroe in 2024, and then did a nice job this year, but it's not like he lit the world on fire, right? Like, it's not like we're talking about a guy that was putting up just insane numbers. He is
Turnover rates, his 29 touchdown passes, 5 interceptions. That's really good.
Yeah.
But it wasn't an insane amount of yards. And I will say this: he does throw the ball with anticipation. He does handle the mental part of things.
Oh, and that's the thing is, like, there's a lot to really like about him, like that, and I think that's where people get caught up in it, right? Like, they're like, oh, you don't like him, or you don't know what you're talking about. And it's like, no, I actually I do, and one of the things that I've said about him is that I have concerns about the fact that he wins from the pocket. That's what he does well, but we don't see that from 6'1" quarterbacks very often. I've seen people talk about Brock Purdy, and it's like, well, Purdy's a better athlete. Purdy's thicker, and Purdy was drafted in the 7th round. So again, you're talking about investment, right? You're talking about the investment in a player, in a position. Those
Brock had played a lot of football in college.
Yeah. He's got a bevy of injuries he dealt with in 2025, and people will say, well, that's because he does such a good job of staying in the pocket and taking it. Okay, well, if you struggled to stay healthy in college because of that, you're going to have bigger issues in the pros, where these players are bigger, faster, and stronger. So again, like, what is the plan there? You can see the struggles as he became more dependent on. And what I mean by that is as the games got bigger and the moments got bigger, that is when we saw the struggle the most from Ty Simpson. And that is, a legitimate concern. From there, it just becomes a question of what's the value. I've said all along, I think he's a day 2 player, quarterback tax. You take him at 35. It's still heavy to me, but I get it. But you move up, or to take him, in the first round, there's just not a lot of guys that we can compare him to across the board. And that's what the concern is. There's not very many guys that have only started 15 games. There's not very many guys his size with his playing style. There's not many guys that were really bad for large portions of the season in their 1 year as a starter. So all of those things are legitimate concerns. And that begs the question of if it's the right guy to turn the keys of the kingdom over to, especially if you're trying to, rebuild, retool, whatever verbiage you want to put on it, the program as a whole. So that's where I am with Ty Simpson. Again, you take him at, I think it's 34. I misspoke. I apologize.
34.
You take him at 34. It is what it is. You take him, you trade up, you trade extra assets, you move up in the draft to grab this guy. Again, you're
better be sure about it.
Right.
You better be sure about it.
That's a job killer. And if you're wrong, that's your one.
We know with quarterbacks, if you think he's a franchise quarterback, why would you pass on him the first time around?
Well,
and so they're clearly not sold on him.
Unless all this smoke is to move down slightly and then just take him early.
Looking like the Atlanta Falcons with Michael Penix again.
Right.
That's what it would look like. And so if he's not a guy like this is going to be a player that almost every team passes on once at the most important positions. Now, could he work out? Sure. But in terms of value, especially the way they have Jacoby Brissett, they signed Gardner Minshew. They didn't really set up their quarterback room to draft a future starter. It would make more sense to me with how the roster is constructed, with the type of talent that Ty Simpson is, or the questions that you might have about his success in the NFL. I would rather a day 3 quarterback with some upside. We've talked like a Carson back, higher floor, let's say, or Cole Payton on day 3, where you make they have the tools to maybe, but not quite as don't have as quite a good as chance to be a good NFL starter than Simpson. But even still, then you've got a guy who can be a young backup behind the guy you end up drafting in 2027, because either way, it looks like this is going to be a bad season. And so that's the part that's going to be weird about this, is the fact that here's the one thing that's going to happen though. You draft Ty Simpson, we're going to, especially because this team's not going to be good. How long is it going to be before fans are calling for him to play? And then you see, is he going to Josh Rosen it, or is he going to Brock Purdy it?
Yeah, and you just you look at it and you wonder if that's the route to go. But at the end of the day, they're going to do what they do, and you and I have been fans for a long time, and we've watched a lot of dumb decisions and drafts, and we'll still support them.
One more thing coming up next on the Rise of Your podcast, Best Our Cardinals Talk on the Web. Let's talk about how we would like to see the draft play out in terms of positions and where. So if they go one way or another, what will they do in the next one? That's coming up next on Rise of C-Red. We're back on the Rise of C-Red podcast, the Best Our Cardinals Talk on the Web, talking about positional scenarios. So what would we like them to do? Maybe not players, but players / positions over the course of the draft, and give different scenarios. If they go with this player here, what would we like to see there? And so I think we've made it pretty clear that an ideal, like the best case scenario that we both, so definitely I see, this is definitely my best case scenario. Round one, the Jets go with Arvell Reese. The Cardinals draft David Bailey, third overall. And in round two, that Maxime Hinichor is available at number 34, and they draft him 34th overall. Now that's assuming a lot because Max very well could end up our first round pick. There are projections going that direction because of the athleticism, the versatility. That very well could happen. And also, Arvell Reese going second overall instead of David Bailey feels like nearly an impossibility right now. But in my opinion, Bailey round one, Henichor would be the perfect way to kick off the draft. And if they draft a quarterback, I want to see it day three. That's kind of like if I were to pick how this goes: round one, edge; round two, tackle; day three, quarterback; round three, you could go a number of different ways.
Yeah, you and I were talking about this earlier a little bit, not to this extent, but the way I would love to see this all play out, Jess, the thing that I would love to see them do and invest would be the lines. And you know, asking David Bailey to make it to three is a big ask. You know, I'm not as high on Arvell Reese as you are. I'm not as low on Arvell Reese as other people. I'm just indifferent on Arvell Reese. But my ideal draft, the way I would love for it to go, is David Bailey, Max Hinichor at 34. And then in round three, you can start to have a little fun, right? And something that we've talked about, you know, quite a bit. And how would you want it to play out? You have that 65th pick, and you look at the names associated with the consensus board and things of that nature. One name that sticks out immediately that we talked about the other night was Keontae Scott, the cornerback out of Miami. Another name that sticks out immediately as well is Keith Abney, the local product. And we talked about why he could be such a great fit for this group and what they need so badly at the position. Another guy that would be really interesting and could potentially be at that 65 spot would be like a Jennings Dunker, right? The mullet redhead, phenom, social media phenom coming out of Iowa. An interior defensive player that gives you some options and things of that nature. But you also have a guy like Jake Golday out of Cincinnati. I know he's projected a little higher, 55-ish, but he would be a guy that was interesting. Another guy we discussed, Keelan Rutledge, right? But outside of that slot corner, that nickel corner that we're looking at, all of these guys are front seven or offensive line types. And that would be the way I would go, Jess. I would continue to just load up on the interior, whether it be on the offensive line or the defensive front seven, and continue to try to build this into a situation where if you got a Ty Simpson in round 2 in 2027, you're like, oh, okay, this could work. Right. And I know he won't be there. And I'm just saying somebody like Ty Simpson in 2027, that would be ideal. And so that's where I'm at with it. That would be I think my ideal one would probably be Abney. If I had, like, if you made me pick to go David Bailey, Max Hinichor, and Keith Abney. If you want to say Keontae Scott, so there's not back-to-back Sun Devils, I'm fine with that. I'm not even a Sun Devil guy. I don't care. But
I mean,
like
Traden Stukes would be another one that would fit as well.
Yeah, Stukes would be super interesting. Like that's what I'm saying. But if they ended up going, back-to-back O-line picks, and one of them was like a Keelan Rutledge, the guard out of Georgia Tech, right? That we talked about, we'd be like, You know what? I'm not even going to complain. Just going to enjoy the fact that they're
Right. If those 3 picks go in that route, you're like, that's awesome. I feel like they're going to draft a quarterback, and if they're gonna draft a quarterback, give me Carson Beck or Cole Payton on day 3 at some point. A guy that you like, and if I'm kind of planning, looking forward to roster building, while I know Cole Payton has the more upside, he's also really smart. I think Carson Beck is the perfect long-term type, Matt Barkley type player who's going to be in the NFL at the back of the quarterback room for over a decade. And that's like, I know the elbow, but now a year of removed from that, I wonder if his arm strength is going to be improved this year. But I would like what you did on yours round 3. I'm not super picky about what direction they go, but some sort of skill player slash guard would be fantastic. Like defensive lineman work there. But then on day 3, it doesn't really matter. Pick up a quarterback. If you hit those first 3 picks, then it really doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter because day 3 picks are weird picks to begin with anyway. And so
and you're just hopeful you get a Denzel Burke, right? You're just hopeful you get a Dante Stills. Like, and then if you get more than that, you're like, holy crap, like we struck gold. But like if you get those guys, you're like, great, I got borderline NFL starter and a guy that is really, really good. So like that's a win on day 3, right?
Yeah. Day 3 picks, like as long as you hit, as long as they're not waiting till day 3 to address the pass rush, because pass rushers after the top of the first round, good luck, right? In terms of impact pass rushers, they're going to be first round picks, and then after that, good luck. So if you wait like Dane Brugler, if it goes like Dane Brugler's mock draft, and you don't address the edge until day 3, holy cow! Now, if you double up on it in round 1, you get Bailey or Reese in round 1, and then you get a day 3 edge. Hey, whatever, that's fine. But I wouldn't you can draft a running back on day 3. You could draft a receiver on day 3. You could draft a safety on day 3. I don't care what you draft on day 3. Just don't draft specialists. Just don't do that. And don't make the edge the first. Don't make the day 3 the first that you address the edge when your edge looks the way that it does right now. And sure, yeah, blah blah blah. They've got no when Zaven Collins, Baron Browning, B.J. Ojolari, and Jordan Birch combine for 5.5 sacks, that ain't getting it done. This is just not getting it done, especially when Josh Sweat had 0 impact in the fourth quarter of ball games. That's just not going to get it done.
Right. And that's how you look at it. And it's, the reality of everything is that's a team that needs that position addressed to get better and to improve.
But yeah, and so in a week from now, we'll know how round 1 goes. By the time you hear this show, probably day 2 has happened, and hopefully, hopefully things play out well. Our next show, we'll only have one show next week. We will have our mock draft on our show early next week. And after that, we will be busy covering the draft. No time to record. So we will talk. So we'll have the mock draft next week. And the following week, we will react to the draft. But until then, that's Seth Cox. I'm Jess Root. Thanks for listening. As always, we'll be back again soon.
Thanks for listening to the latest edition of the Rise Up, See Red podcast. Listen to previous episodes and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Audioboom, or many other podcast platforms so shows are delivered directly to your mobile device. Please give the show a 5-star rating and always support the sponsors who support the show. We'll be back soon for the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Rise up, Red Sea, be Red, See Red, and of course, Rise Up, See Red.